The truth is, and I hate admitting it, Paul makes me feel seen in a way that's both thrilling and terrifying. Not as the accomplished dentist, not as the woman always outpacing her family, but as just me. And honestly, I have no idea what to do with that. Hi, I'm Melanie. I've always been crystal clear about what I want in life: success, independence, and yes, being the one who makes the biggest paycheck in any room. Some people might call me competitive, but I prefer to think of it as knowing my worth. Let me give you a glimpse into my life right now. I'm 30, running my own dental practice in downtown Boston, and I'm great at what I do. My office boasts a stunning view of the harbor. Not that I have much time to enjoy it between back to back appointments and managing my team of hygienists. My schedule is packed, and that's exactly the way I like it. My mom loves to tell the story about how, when I was 6, I'd line up my stuffed animals for pretend dental checkups. Now, 24 years later, I'm not pretending anymore. I'm living my dream. And the cherry on top, I make more money than anyone else in my family, even my brother Mark, who can't stop bragging about his fancy tech job. Last Thanksgiving, Mark tried to show off his new Tesla. I simply smiled and mentioned the building I'd just bought for my second practice. The look on his face? Absolutely priceless. Maybe that makes me sound a little smug, but I've worked hard to get here. 12-hour days, student loans that felt impossible to pay off, and more cups of coffee than I care to count. Dating, though, let's just say it's been challenging. My ex, Ryan, was great until I casually mentioned my income over dinner with his friends. He nearly choked on his beer, and things were never the same after that. He started making little digs, calling me married to my job, and hinting that some men might feel threatened by my success. Please, if your ego can't handle my bank account, that's not my problem. Then there was David, who had the audacity to mansplain dental procedures to me in my own practice. That relationship lasted exactly 3 weeks. And let's not forget Matt, who insisted he just wanted to take care of me. Trust me, the only thing that needed care was his fragile masculinity. And now there's Paul. We met last month at my friend Sarah's wedding. He's an investment banker, which would normally set off all my alarm bells. Guys in finance usually come with egos bigger than their bonuses. But now there's Paul. We met last month at my friend Sarah's wedding. When I told him about my practice, he asked thoughtful, genuine questions instead of trying to one up me. When I mentioned my expansion plans, he didn't give me that tight, uncomfortable smile my exes always did. Instead, he said, "That's impressive. You must have great business instincts." No backhanded compliments, no subtle jabs, just straightforward appreciation. It's weird because his confidence throws me off. Most men I've dated either try to compete with me or shrink into themselves. Paul does neither. He's just himself. It's kind of annoying, actually. How can someone be that secure? I agreed to a second date with him tomorrow night. Part of me is waiting for the other shoe to drop, for him to reveal some hidden insecurity about my success. But another part, a part I'm not entirely comfortable with, is hoping he won't. Maybe, just maybe, I've finally found someone who gets it. Who gets me, but we'll see. I've learned not to get my hopes up too high. In my experience, men say they want a successful woman until they actually date one. Hi, I'm Paul. Working in investment banking has taught me two key lessons: patience and perspective. You don't last in this field by chasing quick wins or letting your ego call the shots. Success is a long game, and I approach everything in my life, including dating, with that mindset. I first noticed Melanie at Sarah's wedding last month. She had the whole table laughing during the reception, gesturing animatedly with her wine glass, while recounting a story about a patient who tried to diagnose himself using WebMD. There was something magnetic about her confidence, the way she commanded attention effortlessly. Sarah had already given me a heads up about Melanie. She's brilliant but intense, she'd said, and she has this thing about being the most successful person in the room. I remember smiling at that. After 15 years in investment banking, I've seen every kind of ambition and ego imaginable. It takes more than that to scare me off. When we were finally introduced, I understood what Sarah meant. Melanie had a way of weaving her accomplishments into conversation, almost like little tests to gauge my reaction. Within the first 10 minutes, she mentioned her dental practice, her plans for expansion, and her impressive client list. But here's the thing: everything she talked about, she'd earned. I've met enough people faking success to spot the genuine article, and Melanie is the real deal. My colleagues sometimes ask why I'm not intimidated by her. They've seen her at a couple of events we've attended together, where she exudes this "I'm crushing it" energy. The truth? I find it refreshing. Do you know how draining it is to date someone who constantly makes themselves smaller to protect your ego? I've been there, and I'm not going back. Sure, Melanie has a habit of turning everything into a competition. Last week, we were just grabbing coffee, and it somehow became a debate about whose undergraduate program was more demanding, her pre dental track or my economics degree. I let her make her case, hiding my smile behind my cup. She also gets flustered when she can't provoke me, like when she mentioned her new Mercedes, clearly waiting for me to counter with something about my car. Honestly, it's kind of endearing how seriously she takes these things. Instead, I just asked her which features she was most excited about. The expression on her face, a mix of surprise and curiosity, was priceless. It made me want to understand her even more. What people often miss about Melanie is what lies beneath her competitive nature. When she talks about her patients, there's real compassion there. On our last date, she spent 20 minutes telling me about an elderly patient who couldn't afford full treatment and how she worked out a payment plan that suited both of them. That's the real Melanie, not just focused on the numbers. My approach with her is straightforward. I'm playing the long game. While she's busy trying to prove she's the most accomplished person in the room, I'm peeling back the layers to see the real her. The Melanie who still calls her mom every Sunday morning. The one who keeps a stash of old Disney movies for bad days. The one who volunteers at a dental clinic for underprivileged kids, but never posts about it on social media. Some of my friends think I'm crazy. Dude, she's going to eat you alive. My buddy Mike warned me. But they don't get it. I'm not competing with Melanie. I have nothing to prove. I'm just being myself. And I think that unsettles her more than any so called power move ever could. The truth is, I find her fascinating, not just the polished, successful dentist she shows to the world, but all of her ambition, her insecurities, her passion. Sure, she has this need to be the best at everything, But I have patience. I'm curious to see what happens when she realizes there's no competition between us. Because here's what I know about success: it isn't about the size of your paycheck or the car you drive, it's about building something meaningful, something lasting. And from where I'm standing, Melanie and I might just have a shot at doing that, if she can pause her race to the top long enough to notice. Something isn't right with Paul, and it's driving me insane. 3 months into dating, and I still can't figure him out. He's like this unshakable wall of calm that nothing can penetrate, no matter how hard I try. The last week, I casually dropped into conversation that my practice had its highest monthly revenue ever. You know what he did? He smiled. An actual, genuine smile, not one of those fake, tight lipped ones I'm used to seeing. Then he asked if I wanted to celebrate. No competing stats about his banking portfolio, no sly remarks about market fluctuations being harder than dental work, just pure, unfiltered happiness for my achievement. Who does that? I've been testing him, yeah, I'll admit it. Maybe that makes me sound awful, but I need to know who I'm dealing with. At dinner at Mao's, my treat, obviously, I made sure to order the most expensive wine on the menu. Paul simply nodded, appreciated the choice, and started talking about his trip to Napa Valley. No awkward fumbling when I grabbed the check. No passive aggressive comments about splitting the bill. It was maddening. Even my usual tricks aren't working. Yesterday, over coffee, I brought up salaries on purpose. Banking must be tough with the current market, I said, watching for any sign of unease. He just shrugged and said something about cycles being normal in every industry. Then, and this is what really got me, he asked about my plans for expanding the pediatric services at my practice, like he actually cared more about my business than defending his own career. "You're being ridiculous," Sarah told me over brunch when I vented to her. "You finally find a guy secure enough to handle your success, and you're trying to find something wrong with him?" Maybe she's right, but there has to be a catch. Nobody is this well adjusted, right? What really gets under my skin is how he handles my, let's call them, competitive tendencies. Last weekend, we played mini golf. Don't ask. It was his idea, and I might have gotten a little intense about keeping score. Most guys would have either gotten annoyed or let me win to avoid drama. Not Paul. He played his game, cheered when I made a great shot, and didn't flinch when I insisted on a 3-hole tiebreaker. He won, by the way, and somehow, unbelievably, I didn't hate him for it. Sometimes I catch him looking at me with this knowing expression, like he can see right through all my power plays. It makes me feel exposed, even vulnerable. The other day, after I proudly told him about outbidding another practice for prime office space, he simply said, "You know you don't have to prove anything to me, right?" I nearly choked on my coffee. Who gave him the right to be that perceptive? The worst part, or maybe the best part, I honestly can't tell anymore, is that he makes me question things I've always been so sure about, like my constant need to be the best, to always prove myself. When I'm with him, I catch myself relaxing, actually enjoying the moment instead of calculating how to come out ahead. The truth, and I hate admitting this, is that Paul makes me feel seen in a way that's both exhilarating and terrifying. Not as the high achieving dentist, not as the overachiever in her family, but as just me. And I have no idea how to handle that. My mom keeps telling me to just enjoy it, finding someone Who matches your stride is rare, she says. But what if he's not matching my stride? What if he's ahead of me and I'm too preoccupied with competing to notice? I've built my whole identity around being on top. And now here's this maddeningly confident man who makes me question if that's even what I truly want. The scariest part? I'm not sure I hate it as much as I think I should. Um, I decided to break the news during our weekend escape to the Berkshires. We were sitting on the deck of our cabin, watching the sunset when I mentioned the hedge fund opportunity. The way her wine glass froze midair said everything. Her reaction was instant, even if her words hadn't caught up yet. I could almost see the wheels turning in her mind. Hedge funds are brutal, she said, attempting a casual tone. 100-hour weeks, constant stress, impossible targets. Are you sure that's the kind of pressure you want? To anyone else, her concern might have seemed sincere, but after 2 years together, I could read Melanie as easily as I analyzed market data. Um, I took a sip of wine before answering. Honestly, the hours won't be much different from investment banking, and the compensation. I paused, knowing this was the part she'd latch onto. The base salary alone is significantly higher than what I make now, and the bonus structure, it could triple that. The creak of her deck chair as she shifted positions was almost as telling as the series of expressions that flitted across her face: surprise, disbelief, and a flicker of what looked like panic. She tucked her hair behind her ear, her tell whenever she felt unsettled. "Money isn't everything, Paul," she said, her voice steady but strained. "Your current job is stable, respected. Why rock the boat?" One of the things I love most about Melanie is how she holds on to control, even when she's shaken. She spent the next hour rattling off stories of hedge fund collapses, tales of burnout, and the relentless stress that came with the industry. I listened patiently, nodding at the right moments, watching her realize that her arguments weren't having the impact she wanted. "I thought you were happy where you are," she finally said, her voice quieter now. "This isn't just about me," I replied, reaching over to take her hand. "It's about us, our future." The word "our" made her flinch slightly, and I pressed on. "Think about it. With this position, we could afford that beach house you've been dreaming about, or start a foundation for dental care in underserved communities." That last suggestion was deliberate. Her dedication to making dentistry accessible is one of the things I admire most. Still, I could see her struggling. For the first time in our relationship, my income would significantly surpass hers. Not just by a little, but by multiples. Later that evening, I found her sitting alone on the deck, staring out into the darkness. I draped a blanket over her shoulders and waited. "What if it changes things between us?" she finally asked, her voice laced with vulnerability. "The only thing that's changing is what we can do together," I said. "You're still the same brilliant, driven woman I fell in love with. My success doesn't diminish yours." She leaned back against me, but the tension in her shoulders didn't ease. I knew this adjustment would be difficult for her. Melanie had spent years defining her value through her financial success. Now she was facing the possibility that there might be more to her worth. The next few weeks promised to be challenging, but I've always been good at playing the long game, and Melanie is worth every moment. Sometimes the highest returns come from the most unpredictable investments. Any good hedge fund manager knows that. And I just hope she sees this isn't about competing. It never was. It's about building something together, something far more valuable than a paycheck. 6 years have passed since Paul told me about the hedge fund job. Now I'm sitting in our sunlit living room, watching our 3-year-old daughter, Sophie, line up her stuffed animals for dental checkups. Like mother, like daughter, I guess. It makes me smile, but it also brings back memories of how much has changed, how much I've changed. I can still remember that weekend in the Berkshires like it was yesterday. The way my world felt like it was tilting when Paul mentioned his new salary and bonus structure. The sleepless nights that followed, wondering if our relationship could survive such a dramatic shift in dynamics. For someone who had spent her entire life equating her worth with being the highest earner, it felt like the ground beneath me was crumbling. The first few months after Paul started his new role, let's just say they weren't my proudest moments. I threw myself into work, extending hours, taking on more patients, even entertaining the idea of opening a third location. I was like a hamster on a wheel, running faster and faster to keep up in a race that didn't even exist. The breaking point came during a dinner party at our house. Someone complimented Paul on closing a major deal, and I interrupted to share an in depth analysis of my practice's latest quarterly performance. The room fell silent. The look on Paul's face wasn't anger or embarrassment, it was concern. That night, after everyone left, Paul didn't argue. He simply asked, "Are you happy, Mel? Not successful. I know you're successful, but are you happy?" It was such a simple question, but it shattered something inside me. I broke down, sobbing into his expensive dress shirt while he held me. The next day, Paul gently suggested therapy. Not couples therapy. He made it clear that our relationship wasn't the issue, but he thought I might need to explore why I tied so much of my identity to my bank account. At first, I resisted. Okay, I outright refused. But eventually, I gave in. Dr. Martinez became my weekly touchstone. She helped me unpack everything: my competitive relationship with my brother, my fear of being underestimated as a woman in a male dominated field, my deeply ingrained belief that my value was tied to how much I earned. It wasn't easy. Some sessions left me feeling raw, but Paul was there through it all, steady as ever. Slowly, things began to shift. I started focusing on the parts of dentistry I truly loved: helping patients, mentoring young dentists, contributing to the community. The real turning point came when Paul's year end bonus was announced. It was astronomical, more than I'd make in several years. And for the first time, I felt nothing but joy for him. No jealousy, no insecurity, just pride. That's when I knew I was healing. Now, our dinner conversations aren't about who made the most money or closed the biggest deal. Instead, we talk about Sophie's latest antics: the community dental clinic we're funding, or the beach house we're renovating for family trips. Paul was right. He usually is, the infuriating man. Our combined success has allowed us to make a bigger impact than either of us could have alone. I still run my practice, and I'm incredibly proud of what I've built, but my definition of success has changed. It's in the smile of a patient who can finally eat without pain, in the confidence of a young dentist I've mentored, in the peace I feel at night, knowing I have nothing to prove. Paul likes to joke that he played the long game with me, but the truth is, he simply gave me the space to find my own way. Watching him now, reading Sophie a bedtime story with silly voices that make her giggle, I realized something. True partnership isn't about keeping score. It's about growing together, supporting one another, and building something meaningful. Who would have thought that earning less could make me feel like I gained so much more? Certainly not the Melanie from 6 years ago. But then again, she had a lot to learn about what really matters.